Hello and welcome. Amplify Music Communities is an extension of our Amplify Music Conference, in which we take a journey around the world to visit with leaders within the music ecosystems of various cities, regions, states, and countries. Our aim is to have conversations about what's happening at the ground level in these communities and elsewhere, and to look ahead as to what's shaping their future music economies. Today, we chat with three music economy leaders from the state of Colorado. We're excited to have with us our guest, Lisa Gedgaudas, manager at Create Denver and Denver Arts and Venues, a division of the City and County of Denver; Stefan Brackett, music ambassador for the state of Colorado, director of special programs at Youth on Record, and co-founder of the platinum-selling band, the Flowbots; and Chris Zacher, executive director of Levitt Pavillion Denver, board chair of the Colorado Independent Venue Association, and state of Colorado chair of the National Independent Venue Association. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here and visiting with us today. We're going to start by asking you what within your communities is your specific role. Lisa, what is your role as in Denver Arts and Venues?
Yeah, thank you, Storm, and thanks for having me on this, and hi to everybody. My role, I work for the City of Denver, like Storm said. I run the Create Denver initiative, supporting creative industries through the City of Denver, and more specifically related to music. Have recently put out a music strategy for Denver, and supporting any research, policy, and advocacy around our music scene.
And Stefan, what is your role, your various roles, that is?
I think one of the main roles is just being like a proud child of Denver, Colorado, and Denver Public Schools and CSU and such. And then a same thing, like somebody who's been in this music and creative scene for the entirety of their lives. And as such, a massive advocate for the ecosystem that is the creative development of Denver and the state of Colorado. And so, like, my role as director of special programs at Youth on Record, and I am aspiring to have my role as the Colorado statewide music ambassador be that same kind of constant advocacy. So that's the role that I'd like to have it.
Awesome. And Chris, tell us about the hats you wear.
Yeah, I wear a lot of hats these days. I also teach at the University of Colorado, Denver, with you, Storm. So there's another one to the bucket. I'm the board chair for CIVA, the Colorado Independent Venue Association. We're working on advocacy efforts for relief measures and friendlier reopening guides for venues across our state, that not necessarily just music venues in general. With NIVA, I'm the lead for NIVA in this state and doing the same work that I do for CIVA nationally, lobbying for federal relief efforts. We were able to pass a $15 billion bill through Congress. It was signed into law on December 27th. That'll hopefully save a lot of our stages. And then at Levitt Pavillion, I'm the executive director for the nonprofit amphitheater. We produce a ton of music, free shows, paid shows, everything.
Thank you. Well, clearly we have with us three of the folks who are making a lot of the necessary moves in getting us to the future. And that's what I want to ask about. Thinking beyond 2021 and our new normal and your roles, what will be the biggest successes, the boosts, or the obstacle moves that would make the biggest difference in your communities? Lisa, you want to address that?
Sure, happy to start. I mean, I think that because we got moved into the digital age in a much stricter way, it certainly opened up other doors working with other city leadership and people that promote music, both non and for profit, the way that the City of Denver really does, and understand with each other best practices, pitfalls, things like that, especially when we were working for federal funding. We had CARES Act money come through. It was great to tap into places like Seattle or other cities to say, how did that go? What can we do best? How can we do it better? So, to me, those big city connections make a lot of difference. I know the same thing would go for recording and touring opportunities when our community nationwide has come together through the National Independent Venues Association. We've just never seen a gathering of for-profit music industry like this before. So I see a lot of good come out of that. One of the challenges certainly has been, while a lot of these are Band-Aid relief funds in my mind, I'm glad they have been coming out. But one of the biggest challenges I've had with it is how equitable they are.
Yeah.
A lot of this is on a first come, first served basis, or for people that know how to fill out an SBA loan or a city grant. And so it's been extremely challenging to kind of figure out ways to get into the areas of our community that really need that type of support the most during a time of trauma. So that's something I hope we can work further on.
Awesome. And Stefan, what are your thoughts on that?
It's there is no way to make small the crisis that we are in as a music industry, as a nation, and within the world, just everything that is happening. And within any system, you get to see like who the system works for and who it doesn't. And I think we get to see an inflection point of need around those same kind of equity points that Lisa was already talking about. So like, as bad as things are, it's even worse for certain groups. And in that, there's actually now, I think, an even greater opportunity to be able to address, well, okay, like certain things in the music industry, like the music industry is not working for about anybody, right? Well, it's really not working for these musicians in these communities, for BIPOC musicians and such. So like now we can also like address a lot more of this when the whole thing is halted a bit. Because like we all know that like our industry is kind of built on momentum and busyness and activity, and with that, that means a lot of the wounds never get addressed. And then we can actually just like count the bodies of the brilliant people who got burned out, like in hindsight. But at no point in time can we slow down the machine long enough to be like, can we do this a better or different way? So I think one of the things that's been an opportunity of this moment is being able to kind of explore alternatives. Engage in dialogues with communities while things have like slowed down for a bit. And I do think that when we are returning to what I'm hoping is like a new healing, there will be all of these processes will be a bit more transparent to how they're either contributing to inequity or how they're reducing inequity. And that's one of the things like I'm seeing conversations like that happening at all levels of our industry as well. So if I'm talking to people at YouTube Music and they're talking about like, oh, well, how can Google invest their money and like put their money in their mouth where their mouths are, like with investing in BIPOC creators for Black History Month, or even like talking about like how profit trees are being built at Spotify, like seeing how like people are actually like looking at this. So seeing that the conversation is real has been pretty amazing right now. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. It's like this opportunity, this disruption is a real chance to address things that have never been addressed in this industry before.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for those insights. Chris, what are your thoughts from your role?
I gotta follow up, Stefan. I think he just said everything. I mean, he really pushed on a point there, though. The way this industry operates, when we're in full motion, it's really hard to go back and correct inequities. And those inequities are vast. They're not just about people of color or people with disabilities. They're about systematic issues that really need attention. And because of what we were able to do on the independent venue side of things, creating this monster of NIVA that's been so successful, our next step and what we're working on now is addressing a lot of these issues as we move forward. You know, independent venues typically are fiercely independent, and there's not a lot of communication or sharing of ideas from venue to venue, and that's changed through this pandemic. And that is going to allow our independent music scene to carry on. You know, I think if you take all of the issues we have as an industry, one of the biggest issues that exist is that we're becoming like Amazon, where we're going to have one or two people who control everything. And that's dangerous. It's dangerous for progress. It's dangerous for marginalized people. It's dangerous for for just about anybody who's doesn't have a seat at that table. And this pandemic has allowed us to flip that script and start talking about the issues that exist and working towards fixing them and correcting them.
I would also add to that, Chris can speak to this too, but NIVA made a point of hosting an open forum, like a town hall every week for any venue that was a member or becoming a member. We must have had 250 to 300 venues every week on that Zoom call talking to each other, even talking through the George Floyd murder and how to consider if their venues are even catering to people of color or how they can do it better, and having a really open conversation about that. So it was an interesting coming together of a different type of family we didn't think we would have because it's so fractured.
Yeah, and when the SVOG grants, the SOS grants got passed by the federal government, the very first thing we did was sit down and say, how can we reach these clubs that are in a lot of trouble, that are in marginalized communities, that are on native land, that aren't necessarily being spoken to. So we spent weeks, we're still doing it, trying to find all of these small venues to save them. When we think about music, we often think about these giant stadiums or these big, huge acts. That's such a small percentage of what music is. And I know Steph and Lisa can speak to this as well. It's such a small percentage. And we have to find a way to save, the art before it's too long, before it's too good. It's too late. It's all gone. There's a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Amen. And speaking of work, in your all's roles here in Colorado, what public policies will you be advocating for in the short and long terms to get to where we need to get? Can you think of any of those, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, we put out the Denver Music Strategy a few years ago now, and through that we have the Denver Music Advancement Fund, and that the goal of that fund, that grant, is to talk about how music saves lives, what it does for education, what it does on the other side of recording and touring, and really highlight those stories and motivate people to remember that and get paid to do those things or spark new ideas for the future, new collaborations, that kind of thing. And I think, I'm with Arts and Venues. So on the venue side, we run Red Rocks, and as a city agency, we're an enterprise fund. So advocating for more dollars from a venue like Red Rocks and filtering, more of that funding into our communities needs to happen more continuously with more funding. So we will continue to push our own agency along that route. Yeah, never done asking for more money.
and I know you're great at it. Stefan, music ambassador of the state of Colorado. Not every state has a music ambassador. What will you be advocating for?
Oh, here we go. I muted myself just to make sure that I didn't amen so much that distracted from what Lisa was saying.
And there's a lot to amen.
Yes. But I think one of the reasons we even have a music ambassador is because of the work of folks like Lisa G. Because we have a music strategy, that kind of stuff is the proto-policy work, where it's demonstrating the value where people didn't understand it before. And so once that's done, that evangelizes for you so you can start doing more work. And I feel like that kind of proto-policy work is a lot of the things that I'm going to try to be doing as the ambassador. For example, I know, and all of us here know what music does, but most people don't. And you have to code switch, and you have to start creating different examples so people can see what it does. And once it's demonstrated, then I don't have to convince people of it. So in Youth on Record, when we're talking about the importance of arts education in the school day, I have to convince funders with all of these different arguments, which I feel fine about because I know it's legit, so it's easy to find data for it. But I'm looking at how do we expand that. So when we look at Colorado as a whole, and we see suicide numbers are cresting in rural communities. Now, music won't solve that, but music is where young people are. So music can be the medium for communication of resources and all of these things. So I am trying to explore more and more ways in which music can be the medium by which the medicine is given out, especially during a time of communal suffering. And so once you're able to kind of do that, I think you've demonstrated the value in such a way in a time of lack, so that when we get to a point when there's a time of plenty, we won't have to fight tooth and nail to say how important this stuff is. So I'm working in lots of different ways. Like some of them are really big ideas. Like right now, I'm trying to talk with a lot of educators about perhaps creating additional kind of arts-based programming to make up for the gap that most of our students are going to be experiencing from this past year. And if we can coordinate with all the amazing organizations that we have, taking kids to the mountains or taking kids like to music programs and all this, like create a great buffer this summer, then we won't have to see this massive roller coaster dip off, particularly for students of less means that we see every year. But this year in particular, even kids who are at like the best private schools are seeing a fall off, and they've been in person the whole time. The arts can be one of the ways. Music can be one of the ways that we get to actually like heal some of these things and maybe start using these new systems as permanent systems. So like I'm trying to create a program where we start seeing if we have different like block party variances where we can maybe start having neighborhood shows that move so people can just watch the shows from their blocks. Right, but then like if we have a summer where everybody experiences music, do you think they're going to want to walk that back? Right. So I think there's lots of ways and opportunities within this, but like I want to do some of the proto policy work that shows the value of it and how much we need it, so that people won't be able to walk it back like we have the last 15 years. Because we know that where it gets us, and in a time of great suffering and need, we need it more than ever, and people need this music. So how do we get it to them safely, and how do we get it to them at a time when they need it? So yeah, just little things,
Just little things. Yeah.
Couple things.
Well, from what you just said, Colorado is just so lucky to have you as the music ambassador, Stefan. Really appreciate those insights. All right, Chris, what's your approach to that?
Boy, I'm working on a lot of like current policy and teeing up for future policy. Over the past year, we were able to craft, legislation that I've talked about earlier that was amazing that we were able to get that passed, especially for a group that was new under a Congress that was controlled by the non-arts sector of our country. I think, long term, as far as CIVA and NIVA go, we pull our members because we want to make sure we have buy-in before we start advocating for something. So there are a lot of things we want to advocate for. We want to advocate for a $15 minimum wage. We want to make sure the gig workers are paid fairly for the work that they do. We would like to, continue to advocate for arts in schools. We do run an art a program where we teach kids in elementary schools in Denver that are underserved music lessons. We want to continue to do that. We want to help advocate for that on a state level with people like Stefan. And then I think, there's a lot of issues we're advocating for. So it's like, where do you start? Where do you stop?
Yeah.
Also with working with independent venues across this country to provide these tracks to keep them alive and to keep them solvent. Those are really the big pieces right now outside of reopening. We've got to make sure that we have safe, and that's the first word, safe and friendly reopening guides for venues that do not give advantages to the rich and powerful. And that's the difficult piece, because our state government, our city government, our federal government, our county governments, they all tend to always lean towards the rich and powerful. We've got to stop that. The people have voices, and now we have an outlet to use them, and we have to do that.
Great. And again, we appreciate the work you've been doing locally in Denver and nationally. And I know it keeps you busy, Chris. All right, I'm going to get personal now and ask you in the just few minutes we have left, real quick responses, if you don't mind, to a question of what about you personally? How has your life changed between early 2020 and how do you think it'll change between then and early 2022?
Well, I haven't seen any live music. I don't know about you guys. So hopefully that'll change. But honestly, on a personal note, I mean, it's been pretty incredible to get some, I don't know, more balanced time with my family, my life, and my community in a different way, and have much more meaningful conversations and take a time to self-care. I think that's just so huge, and we don't have that enough, especially when we're expected to work the hours that we do and beyond that, which I know all of us here have so many hats. So having that space to be inspired and even have space to think of new visionary ideas is ideal. Selfishly, on another more business-minded side of my personality, I mean, I was able to work with Chris a lot over the last year, and it's been amazing to work nationally with him. We supported NIVA's Emergency Relief Fund before the Save Our Stages Act came out, and helped to distribute $3 million with our also colleague Carl over
3.5 now.
3.5. Yep.
3.5 now.
So another Band-Aid, but it was amazing to be a part of that. And I think that was an inspiring moment to say, like, it breaks down the barriers of where we are in this, in like nationally on the map. And man, did I want to become a lobbyist. I'm like, that sounds good to me. No one's that knight in shining armor very much at the federal level. So maybe I can talk Chris and maybe Stephanie too.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Stefan, where do you see yourself transitioning between those two time periods?
I think a little bit like to what Lisa was saying, this has been a great time to plant seeds. I've never had this much time to think about, work on stuff that I've always thought about doing. Not just like musically, but like how I do my music, how I communicate with folks, what kind of coalitions I want to build, how I can challenge things. Like just like even in the fundraising bit, like having conversations with foundations and being like, can you move the 4 to 5%? Because if you did, do you know how much that would change things? Like you can give more. There's no rule that you can only give the 4%, but like if you moved it to 5, like it would be monumental. Or like, what if you flipped like how we distributed money and like being able to have those conversations now? So I am looking forward to, and I am terrified about the harvest. So what is going to come up when things are really moving again? I feel like it's going to be massive. There's like so many things that are going to be popping up. So I'm intimidated by that prospect, but it's also the thing that's getting me through this time is just like knowing that I am dutifully like trying to plant as many seeds as possible. So I'm really looking forward to like harvesting this and what this harvest is going to mean for this city and state. And yeah, I think that's going to be incredible.
That Great. And your hair has gotten so long, Stefan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Chris.
I almost didn't recognize you.
Chris, what's your view of the future there?
I don't know. Between when this started and now, I haven't had enough time to think about it, of what's changed for me professionally or personally. I'll figure that out when this is over. And I think that's the attitude that those of us that are pushing so hard have. It's that we're survivors and we care about this scene, and this scene has never been comfortable. There's always obstacles. And one day I'll have a chance to sit back and look at it and say, yeah, we went from here to there, or this happened. I think it's important to remove yourself from all of this when you're working for other people, and to think about the community as a whole and not about yourself personally. So I'll have a chance to do that down the road, and I'll figure it out at that point in time. For me, it's just like with Lisa and Stefan. I mean, we're arts advocates. This is what we do. So coming into this pandemic, we were ready. I mean, we can handle anything. We've survived this music scene for as long as we have. We can handle anything, or music in general. So we'll ffigure it out. We'll figure it out down the road. I haven't had the time that Stefan has to think too much about projects or anything. I wish I had a little bit of that time, but one day.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us, and your insights are so valuable, and we commend you on all you're doing for the state of Colorado, and we thank you as well. As far as Amplify Music Communities, we'll continue to talk to other communities throughout the world, and you can find more info at amplify.org/communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.